Picture this. It's late. The kind of late where the streets are quiet, the air feels heavier, and every little sound seems louder than usual. You're exhausted, your eyes sting from the long day, and all you want is something simple, just to get home, crawl into bed, and shut the world out for a while. You reach for your phone, open the Uber app, and order a ride. Totally normal, right? It's almost muscle memory at this point. You've done it 100 times before. The app shows you the details, the car model, the color, the driver's name, and the estimated arrival time. You watch that little icon inch closer to your location, and you feel a wave of relief. Everything's under control. But here's the twist. Tonight's story isn't about a smooth ride home. Tonight's story is about what happens when the car that pulls up in front of you isn't the one on the app. Now, on the surface, that sounds like nothing more than a glitch. You've all had apps freeze or act weird before. Maybe your Wi-Fi drops, maybe the GPS freaks out for a second. No big deal. So your first instinct is to shrug it off. But let me tell you something. This wasn't just a glitch. This wasn't just the app lagging behind reality. What happened that night was far stranger. Because the ride that person got into, it never appeared on the passenger's app at all. No record of a trip, no receipt in their email, no history in their profile, nothing. As far as Uber's system was concerned, that ride never happened. And that's the part that makes your stomach drop. Think about it. How many times have you trusted an app to keep you safe, to log where you are, who you're with, even the license plate number of the car you're stepping into? That little layer of tech makes us feel like everything's official, like nothing can go wrong. But in this case, that safety net didn't exist. Already feels strange, right? Like stepping into a blank space in reality. But here's the thing. You haven't even heard the half of it. Because if you think no record of a ride is creepy enough, trust me, it gets so much worse. This story comes from a mid-sized city. Not some creepy backwoods, not an abandoned highway. Just an ordinary urban place where people call Uber every single day. A place with coffee shops still glowing late at night, neon signs buzzing above quiet streets, and the occasional sound of traffic lights clicking from red to green, even though almost no one is around. It's the kind of city where you'd never expect anything out of the ordinary to happen. Our storyteller had gone out for drinks with friends. Nothing wild, nothing out of control, just laughter, a little music, and that warm, tired feeling you get when the night is winding down. They made the smart choice, no driving under the influence. Instead, they reached for their phone, opened the Uber app, and booked a ride. It was supposed to be simple. Tap the screen, wait 5 minutes, and head home. So far, so normal. The app showed that a car was on its way, a black sedan. The driver's name popped up clearly. You know the drill. Profile picture, star rating, license plate number. Everything lined up the way it always does. Nothing seemed suspicious. The little car icon on the map moved closer. 2 minutes away, then 1. You could almost hear the relief in the passenger's sigh as they stepped outside into the cool night air. The street was calm, with only a couple of other people waiting for their own rides. The glow from the street lamp made the pavement look golden, and in the distance, headlights flickered toward them. But here's where things get sketchy. because the car that slowed down in front of them looked like the one on the app, but not exactly. Same color, same general shape, but something felt slightly off. The shine of the paint, the way the headlights flickered, even the sound of the engine idling, it wasn't a perfect match. At first glance, you wouldn't think twice, but when you looked closer, the differences stood out. The driver rolled down the window and called out their name with confidence, like he had been expecting them. That should have been reassuring, but instead, it sent a weird jolt through the passenger's chest. How did he know their name so quickly? Why did it feel too smooth, too practiced, like someone who had done this before? The passenger glanced back at their phone. The app still showed the official car just a couple of streets away, not here yet. And that's when the first thread of unease started to weave its way into the night.
As the passenger waited, a car pulled up that looked almost identical to the one in the app. The color matched perfectly, a sleek black, polished enough to reflect the dim glow of the street lights. The shape and the make felt close, too. The kind of everyday sedan you'd expect to see on a rideshare app. Even the way it slowed down and stopped near the curb felt right. For a moment, it seemed like the night was wrapping up smoothly. But then came the detail that didn't quite fit. The license plate. It wasn't the same as the one on the screen. Just a few numbers off, but enough to stand out. Now here's the thing. Most of us in that situation would probably shrug it off. Maybe the app hadn't updated yet, maybe the driver borrowed another car. Maybe it was just a harmless little mix-up. That's exactly what went through the passenger's mind. After all, when you're tired, your brain looks for reasons to relax, not to panic. The driver leaned slightly out of the window, and with a calm, almost friendly tone, called out the passenger's name. Not a guess, not a question, just direct, confident, like he already knew who was standing there. That simple detail made it feel official, made it easier to believe everything was fine. Think about it. If a stranger pulls up and just says, "Need a ride?" you'd hesitate. But if they call your name, your guard drops. It feels safe, familiar, legit. And remember, by this point, the passenger had already had a few drinks. They weren't stumbling, but they weren't exactly at their sharpest either. Their mind was running on autopilot, more focused on getting home than double-checking tiny details. A bed, a pillow, and sleep, that's all that was on their mind. So, with that mix of exhaustion and trust in the system, they did what most of us might have done. They opened the back door, slid into the seat, and pulled it shut behind them. Inside, the car smelled faintly of air freshener. Sweet but chemical, like something you'd pick up last minute at the gas station. The seats were warm, as if someone had just been sitting there. The dashboard glowed with dim lights, and the driver adjusted the mirror, flashing a polite smile before shifting into gear. The passenger leaned back, exhaling. For a second, everything seemed fine. Just another ride share, just another late-night trip home. But deep down, somewhere in the back of their mind, a tiny voice whispered that something didn't line up. Something was just a little off.
Inside,
The car smelled faintly of cheap air freshener, the kind of artificial scent that tries to mask something else but never fully succeeds. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was noticeable, hanging in the air with that sharp, chemical sweetness. At first, nothing unusual. Plenty of ride-share cars smell like that. The driver seemed polite, maybe a little too polite. His tone carried that practiced friendliness you'd expect from someone who talks to strangers all night long. He asked the typical small-talk questions. "So, how was your night? Been out with friends?" The kind of questions that usually put a passenger at ease. Harmless enough, right? The answer answered vaguely, keeping it short. Just the usual, yeah, they had a nice time. They were tired, and they were ready to get home. The driver nodded, smiling, as if he'd heard the same story 100 times before. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every so often, meeting the passenger's gaze for just a moment longer than necessary. Not enough to call it out as strange, but long enough to make the passenger notice. And here's the thing that pushed the night from slightly odd into unsettling. When the passenger casually glanced down at their phone, the Uber app still showed their real ride as on the way. According to the app, their assigned driver hadn't even arrived yet. The official trip hadn't started. Which begs the question, if their real Uber driver hadn't arrived, then who was driving this car? The thought hit like a cold drop of water running down the back of the neck. It didn't make sense. The driver had called their name. The car matched the general description. Everything about the situation was convincing enough. But the one detail, the one thing that couldn't be ignored, was right there glowing on the phone screen. The app disagreed with reality. The passenger tried to push the unease aside. Maybe the app glitched. Maybe it hadn't updated. It happens with tech sometimes. But no matter how many excuses they tried to give themselves, that little question kept looping in their mind. Who exactly was behind the wheel? And why did it feel like they were smiling just a little too much?
About 5 minutes into the ride, the passenger casually checks their phone again. They weren't expecting anything strange, maybe just a notification that the trip had officially started. But what they saw instead made their stomach twist. The Uber app still showed their assigned driver circling nearby, as if still searching for them at the original pickup spot. The little car icon spun around the map in confusion, completely unaware that the passenger was already moving across town in a different vehicle. The passenger frowned, their thumb hovering over the screen. That couldn't be right. They tilted the phone slightly, refreshing the app, waiting for it to catch up. But no change. According to Uber, they hadn't been picked up. No trip in progress. Finally, they broke the silence. "Hey, weird thing, the app still says my ride hasn't started." The driver chuckled in a low, casual way, like he'd been waiting for the comment. "Yeah, happens sometimes. System glitches all the time. Don't worry about it." On the surface, it seemed logical. Apps mess up, GPS signals bounce, updates can lag. The explanation was simple enough. But as the words settled in the passenger's ears, they didn't feel right. Uber's system isn't perfect, sure, but it isn't that glitchy. And the more the passenger thought about it, the heavier the silence in the car began to feel. That laugh from the driver wasn't a nervous laugh. It was confident, like he'd given this explanation before. Too practiced. Too easy. The passenger's eyes drifted to the window. The city lights blurred past, streets they didn't fully recognize, sliding by under the glow of street lamps. A cold realization started to creep in. If the app wasn't tracking them, then technically, no one knew where they were right now. No digital breadcrumb trail, no trip ID, no receipt waiting to pop up in their email. In the system's eyes, they weren't even in a car. They were just missing. That thought made the tiny hairs on the back of their neck stand up straight. The unease that had been whispering at the edges of their mind now felt louder, sharper, harder to ignore. Their heart gave a quick nervous thump, and suddenly every detail in the car felt magnified. The faint hum of the engine, the click of the turn signal, even the driver's steady breathing. It was as if the air itself had grown heavier, and yet the driver kept smiling in the rearview mirror like nothing was wrong at all.
Then came the next red flag. Instead of merging onto the highway, the fastest, most direct route home, the driver smoothly flicked on the turn signal and steered into a quieter part of town. The tires hummed against the pavement as the familiar glow of the highway entrance disappeared in the rear view mirror. At first, the passenger thought maybe they were imagining it. Maybe the app's navigation had rerouted. But when they glanced down at their phone again, the map clearly showed the usual route, straight to the highway, not this detour. Their chest tightened. The passenger spoke up, trying to keep their voice steady. This isn't the route I usually take." The driver's eyes met theirs in the rearview mirror. His smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew a little wider, calm and casual. "Oh, trust me, this way is better. Less traffic." Less traffic? At night? In a city where most roads were already empty? The excuse felt paper thin. It wasn't just unconvincing, it was unsettling. The way he delivered the line with absolute confidence made it sound rehearsed, like he'd used it before. The passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seat, one hand tightening around their phone. Out the window, the scenery was changing. Instead of brightly lit storefronts and familiar intersections, they were now gliding through darker streets, lined with warehouses, closed shops, and empty sidewalks. The comforting background noise of nightlife was gone, replaced by silence, broken only by the occasional buzz of a flickering street lamp. Every turn seemed to take them deeper into areas the passenger didn't recognize. Each block looked less familiar than the last. That uneasy thought crept in. If something happened, it would be a long time before anyone even noticed. The air inside the car suddenly felt heavier. That cheap air freshener from earlier, once just a faint annoyance, now seemed suffocating. The hum of the engine felt louder, the road bumps sharper. Even the driver's polite smile in the mirror seemed to carry a different weight. weight. Less like friendliness, more like a mask. The unease that had been whispering in the background all this time grew into something sharper, something closer to fear. Their body reacted before their mind could catch up. Heart racing, muscles tensing, eyes darting between the glowing map on their phone and the unfamiliar streets rushing past the window. It was no longer just a strange ride. It was the sinking realization that they were going somewhere they were never supposed to be.
The driver started asking oddly personal questions. At first, it was nothing unusual, just the standard small talk you'd expect. "So, what do you do for work?" The passenger gave a short, generic answer, hoping the conversation would end there. But it didn't. The driver's tone shifted ever so slightly, casual on the surface, but probing underneath. "Do you live alone?" he asked, his eyes flicking up to the rear-view mirror to catch the passenger's reaction. That question landed like a stone in the pit of the passenger's stomach. It wasn't just curiosity. It felt targeted. Why would a driver need to know that? The passenger forced a light laugh and dodged the question with a vague reply, pretending to check their phone. But the driver didn't stop. A moment later came another one. "Is anyone waiting for you at home?" Every alarm bell in the passenger's mind went off at once. Their pulse quickened, pounding so hard they could almost hear it in their ears. These weren't normal rideshare questions. These weren't the harmless icebreakers to fill an awkward silence. These were personal, too personal, the kind of questions that mapped out how vulnerable someone might be. The passenger kept their answers short, deliberately vague, almost robotic. "Yeah, someone's around." "I'm not really sure who's home tonight." They shifted their gaze out the window, hoping their body language would signal they weren't in the mood to talk. But the atmosphere inside the car was shifting. What had started as polite small talk now felt like an interview, with questions designed to extract information. The driver's voice was calm, steady, but his persistence carried an edge that made the passenger's skin crawl. By now, the passenger's heart was racing. Their fingers tightened around the phone in their lap. Their mind was screaming at them that something was very, very wrong. Finally, the passenger decided to act. Their gut had been screaming at them for minutes, but now it was undeniable. Something was off. Holding the phone tight, they opened the Uber app again, scrolling quickly to the driver's profile. Their assigned car still hadn't arrived, still circling on the map just a few blocks away. With shaky fingers, they tapped the call driver button. The phone rang once, twice. Then a man's voice picked up on the other end, calm but slightly confused. "Hey, I'm outside where you pinned me. I can't find you. Where are you?" The words slammed into the passenger like a cold wave. Their stomach dropped, their throat went dry. In that instant, everything clicked into place. The unease, the wrong license plate, the glitch explanation, the personal questions. Chills. Absolute chills. The real driver was still waiting at the pickup spot, which meant the person currently behind the wheel was not an Uber driver at all. They weren't in a registered ride. They weren't in a trip recorded by the app. They were in some random stranger's car. The passenger's heart pounded so loud it felt like the driver could hear it. Their mind raced with possibilities. Who was this person? How did they know the passenger's name? Had they just guessed? Or had they been watching the area, waiting for someone distracted and tired enough to make a mistake? The weight of the realization pressed down hard. Without the app tracking them, there was no digital trail, no proof of where they were headed, no official record to fall back on. If anything happened, it would be as if they had vanished into thin air. They forced themselves to stay calm, hiding the panic that was screaming inside. Their voice needed to sound casual and steady. The last thing they wanted was to alert the driver that they knew the truth. Their only thought now was simple. They needed to get out of that car, and fast.
Heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. They scrambled for an excuse, anything that sounded casual, normal, not suspicious. Finally, they blurted out, "Oh, hey, can you stop here for a second? I just need to grab something from the store real quick." The driver hesitated, eyes flicking toward them through the rearview mirror. It was only a second, but it felt like an eternity. Then, with a short nod, the car eased toward the curb near a brightly lit gas station. The passenger forced a smile, acting calm, even though their insides were screaming. "Thanks, I'll just be a minute." They pushed the door open, stepped out, and shut it behind them as smoothly as possible. Every muscle in their body was tense, ready to run. And the moment their shoes hit the pavement, they didn't walk, they bolted. Straight across the lot, through the sliding glass doors, and into the fluorescent safety of the gas station store. They didn't stop at the front counter. They didn't grab a snack or drink to keep up the act. Instead, they made a beeline for the back corner, ducking behind a rack of shelves stacked with cleaning supplies and bottled water. Their chest heaved as they tried to breathe quietly, ears straining for any sound of pursuit. Through the glass doors, they could still see the car. It hadn't left, it just sat there, idling, headlights glaring into the night like unblinking eyes. The seconds dragged on. 1, 2, 5, 10. The driver seemed to be waiting, watching. The passenger's phone was still clutched in their hand, slick with sweat. They debated calling someone. Maybe the real Uber driver, maybe the police, maybe a friend. But even dialing felt risky, like the sound of their voice might somehow draw attention. Finally, after what felt like forever, the car shifted into gear. Slowly, almost reluctantly, it rolled forward. The red tail lights glowed as it pulled onto the street and then disappeared into the dark. Relief washed over them in a tidal wave, so strong their knees nearly gave out. They stayed hidden for another couple of minutes just to be sure. Only then did they finally approach the counter, pretending to browse candy bars, trying to look like any other late-night customer. But inside, they knew they'd just dodged something dangerous, something that could have ended very differently if they hadn't trusted that gut feeling.
When they finally pulled their phone back out, hands still trembling, the Uber app told a story that didn't match what just happened. Their real driver was still parked exactly where they had been picked up earlier, still waiting, still messaging, completely clueless. The passengers stared at the screen, their pulse hammering in their ears. The app showed zero evidence of the ride they had just been on. No receipt, no trip in progress, nothing. As far as the system was concerned, they had never left that pickup spot. Meanwhile, the fake car, the one they had been sitting in, was gone. Not even a glimpse of headlights in the distance. Just vanished into the night like it had never been there. That alone was eerie enough. But here's the part that sent absolute shivers down their spine. The man who picked them up rolled down his window and called their name. Not just a random guess, their actual first name. Loud, clear, confident. And yet there was no way he should have known it. The only place their name was visible was inside the Uber app, between the passenger and the legitimate driver. So how did this stranger, this person in a completely different car, know exactly what to say to convince them? The thought kept spiraling in their head. Maybe it was some bizarre coincidence. Maybe he overheard someone say their name at the bar earlier. Maybe he just got lucky. But the more they thought about it, the less sense it made. Because it wasn't just the name. The timing was perfect. He pulled up right when the real driver was supposed to arrive. The car matched almost exactly, down to the make, the model, and even the color. If it wasn't planned, then it was one of the most impossibly precise accidents ever. And if it was planned, well, that raises questions no one really wants to answer. The passenger tried telling friends about it later, but every time they explained the part where the fake driver called their name, people would stop and frown. That detail was always the one that made everyone go quiet. Because it's not just unsettling, it suggests something much darker. Was someone watching their app activity? Was their data leaked somehow? Or did they run into a person who was intentionally hunting for vulnerable passengers? No matter which explanation you pick, none of them feel safe. None of them let you sleep easy at night. And that's what makes this story so disturbing. It wasn't just about a ride that didn't show up on the app. It was about how someone, somehow, knew more than they ever should have. The moral here is simple but critical. Always check the license plate. Always confirm the driver's name and details in your app. Never, ever step into a car just because someone calls out your name. It might feel harmless in the moment, especially when you're tired, distracted, or just ready to get home. But that small decision can be the difference between safety and something far scarier. Think about it. The only thing that gave this fake ride away was a mismatched license plate. Just one small detail that could have been ignored if the passenger hadn't noticed it at the last second. And even then, exhaustion made them brush it off. That's how easy it is to slip into danger without realizing it. It's honestly chilling how close this story came to ending very differently. One wrong turn, one moment of silence instead of questioning the route, and we might not be hearing this account at all. That's not an exaggeration. It's the reality of how vulnerable we can be when we put trust into a stranger behind the wheel. Technology makes us feel safe. We open it up, we see a face, a name, a car model, and we think the system will protect us. But this story proves something important. Apps can't replace awareness. The app might show you a ride is nearby, but it's your job to double-check the details before you ever open the door. Always match the license plate. Always ask, "Who are you picking up?" instead of giving away your own name.
Always trust your gut if something feels off, even if it makes you seem rude, because being safe is worth 100 times more than being polite. This passenger trusted their instincts just in time, and that's why they were able to walk away. But it's a reminder for all of us. The line between an ordinary night and a nightmare can be thinner than you think. Stay alert, stay cautious, and remember, safety first every single ride. Hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss more horror and mystery stories just like this. And again, if you've got a creepy story of your own, whether it's a haunted house, a late night drive, or something unexplainable, you can send it to the email in the description. We love hearing from you guys. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and remember, the scariest rides are the ones that never even show up on the app.